Hello, and welcome to Caucus Night. I'm Wayne Woodfield, Vice Chair of the United Utah Party, and I'll be your host tonight. We hosted a caucus night back on March 8th on the same night as some of the other political parties in the state, but we got feedback from a lot of people that they would have loved to attend our caucus night if it hadn't been at the same time as theirs. So we thought, why not do it again? So we invited all our speakers back, and here we are for Caucus Night Encore. For our party members joining us today, thank you for coming. And for those that are just learning about the United Utah Party, welcome. Members of the United Utah Party are called uniters because we seek common ground, we strive for civility in politics, and we take reasoned positions on issues that take the best from both sides of the political spectrum. We hope you'll become a uniter as well and help us bring common sense politics back to Utah. If you've been to a caucus meeting for another political party before, you'll see a few differences here. First of all, you didn't have to verify your voter registration status or switch your party affiliation to attend today. If you did that anyway, thank you. And if you're not a member of the party, we hope you will become a member of the UUP very soon. But whether you are or you aren't a member of our party, whether you do or you don't join our party, you are welcome here. We're an open political party. We have open caucus meetings, we have open primaries. We invite you to come as you are, bring the best of your previous political experiences with you, and leave the worst behind. The second thing you'll notice is that we will not be electing state and county delegates today, and that is because every member of the United Utah Party is a delegate of the party at our county and our state conventions. If you are a party member or you request to become a party member before our state or county conventions, you may attend our conventions as a delegate and vote for our candidates and other UUP party issues. And if you are not a member of our party, you are still welcome at our conventions as an observer. So the business of this caucus meeting today is to introduce you to the United Utah Party and give you a chance to meet our 2022 candidates and our party leaders. And we've got some great ones here to speak to you tonight. I will pause for a moment and I will bring up our agenda. So I'm joined today by Hilary Sterling, the party chair of the United Utah Party. We have three candidates here for Utah State House and Senate, and they are Kimberly Wagner from Davis County, Alan Wessman from Utah County, and Piper Manesse from Cedar City down in Iron County. We also have our candidate for U.S. House of Representatives District 4, January Walker. I'm joined by well-known podcaster and former KSL News radio personality, Mcfarland, who is our candidate for U.S. House of Representatives District 2. And very pleased to welcome Evan McMullin back, independent candidate for U.S. Senate. And we'll hear a brief message from each of these candidates, and then they will stick around to answer your questions. So before we jump into our speeches, I want to explain how that Q&A will work. If you have a question for any of our speakers today or about the United Utah Party, look for a button down at the bottom of your Zoom window called Q&A. You can go there to submit your question. Questions submitted over chat may not get noticed, so do go to the Q&A one. With 7 people here, we can't have all of them answering every question. So when you're writing your questions, please say who the question is directed to, and we will give that question to them. If you don't say who it's for, or if you ask for more than one person to answer your question, we'll probably randomly pick one of them to answer it. We have a UUP member that's screening the questions, and we'll answer as many of them as we can after the candidate speeches are done. So if you have questions that occur to you during the speeches, don't wait. Go ahead and send them right when you think of them, and they will be answered in due course. So we want as much time as possible to answer the questions. So we're going to get right to it. First up, we're going to hear from Hilary Sterling. Hilary was a candidate for Utah House of Representatives District 57 in 2018, and she has been serving in United Utah Party leadership ever since that time. She is currently the chair of the United Utah Party, so that makes her my boss. Coming to us from lovely Pleasant Grove, Utah, introduce you to Hilary Sterling.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Wayne. And just one quick note, if you haven't signed in on our guest book, the link is in the chat, and we'll share it again after I'm done speaking. So we are so glad that you're joining us tonight, and we hope you have an enjoyable evening of politics with us. And if that's not what you're used to, we do things a bit differently here in the United Utah Party. So whether you lean left or right, in between or independent, you're welcome here, and we hope you find that's refreshing. By way of introduction, the United Utah Party was formed in 2017 by moderates from both the Republican and the Democratic parties who were alarmed by the rising extremism they were seeing. They and so many others over the last few years have felt politically homeless and pushed out by those extreme elements. So they created the United Utah Party as a political home for those homeless moderates. And we're building, I apologize. And we're building big because 40% of Utah voters are moderate. So while we're a young and relatively small party, we're not your typical third party. What makes us so different? There are three things I'd like to briefly highlight. First, we walk the walk of a major party, and we're leaving big tracks. We had to sue the state in federal court to get on the ballot, and we won. We've run candidates in every partisan election cycle since, earning more than 242,000 total votes in the various races in 2020, and this despite the pandemic. This year, we're running 24 candidates on the county, state, and federal level, and we'll be pleased to hear from some of them this evening. We still have lots of growing to do, but we're not a minor party. Second, our focus is on practical solutions and key reforms that will bring the state government back to being accountable to the people. Together, we're working on things like better environmental stewardship, government transparency, electoral reforms like ranked choice voting or approval voting that better express the will of the people, and supporting and adequately funding our public school system. You can find our full platform and so much more at unitedutah.org. Third, we are committed to civility. So much political rhetoric is focused on hating our fellow citizens who hold differing views. This is not okay. These are our friends and neighbors, even our family members. So as I said, we do things differently in the UUP. We are not ideological. As our platform states, we ask instead that people come to the political process with goodwill and in good faith. Being a uniter means doing the listening and the hard work required to find common ground. We persuade when we can, extend a hand of friendship when we can't, and respect the voice of the people either way. Tonight, we will hear from uniters who have stepped up to run for office. In a tangible and public way, they truly are putting unifying patriotism above political extremism. They are giving a voice and a vote to those of us who would otherwise have been politically homeless. If their message resonates with you, I encourage you to get involved. Become a grassroots organizer. Make a financial donation. Put out a lawn sign. Volunteer a few hours a week to help your candidate succeed. Running for office is a significant sacrifice, but these candidates do it because they are truly uniters. We invite you to learn about us and, if our party feels like home, to become a uniter too. Again, you can learn more at unitedutah.org.
Thank you so much, Hilary. Next up, we'd like to introduce you to a handful of United Utah Party candidates for Utah State House and Senate. Unfortunately, we don't have time to introduce you to all of them. We have 24 candidates running with the United Utah Party this year, so we've decided to introduce you to 3 of them. And unfortunately, they won't have a whole lot of time to talk, but we wanted to at least let you meet them and get to know them and their faces and put a name to a face and hear a little bit about them. So first off, we'd like to hear from Kimberly Wagner. Kimberly is a candidate for Utah Senate District 7. She was a longtime delegate and precinct vice chair for the Republican Party, now is the county vice chair of Davis County United Utah Party. She has served in education as a PTA legislative vice president, chair of her community council, and part of a curriculum standards review committee, among many other things. Here she is, Kimberly Wagner.
Thank you so much, Wayne. Hello, fellow uniters and guests. I am delighted to be representing the United Utah Party as a candidate in the race against incumbent Stuart Adams. We're in Senate District 7, which is mostly in Davis County. I'll tell you a bit about myself and then invite you to learn more about me at my website, about kimberlywagner.com. I studied English and political science at BYU and then worked in Senator Hatch's office in Washington, D.C. for a couple of years. I earned a master's degree in political science and a PhD in organizational behavior, both from UCLA. My husband, Tom, and I have lived in Fruit Heights for about 15 years. While raising our 3 kids, as Wayne mentioned, I've been very involved in the community. Like many of you, for a number of years, I tried to be a moderating influence within the Republican Party, but it no longer felt like my political home. Then I learned about and joined the United Utah Party, where I found myself among like-minded people, moderates committed to engaging with civility, embracing nuance, instituting common sense political reforms, collaborating to solve challenging problems, and putting principles above party. A Gallup poll several years ago showed that there are roughly as many moderates as conservatives in our state, and it's time for us as moderates to reclaim our place in Utah politics. I don't believe that will happen by trying to turn the Republican and Democratic parties into something they aren't and don't want to be. To those who think they can only have a voice in Utah politics through the Republican Party, I say that's a self-fulfilling prophecy that's only true if we believe it to be so and act accordingly. If moderates statewide unite, we will be a force to be reckoned with. I think of a World War II motto that goes like this: the difficult I'll do right now, the impossible will take a little while. We're doing the difficult right now by showing that we're a viable political party that runs capable candidates. What some think is impossible, becoming a major political force in Utah, will just take a little while. I invite you to speed up the little while by supporting the UUP and its candidates. Thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly. Next up, we'll hear from Piper Manesse. Piper is a candidate for Utah State House of Representatives District 71. Piper spent 20 years in the military and currently lives in Cedar City. And I'll turn the time over to you, Piper.
Thanks, Wayne. As he said, I'm running for Utah House of Representatives from District 71 in Iron County. And you can find out more about me at piperforutah.com. Like you, I'm a moderate who's interested in common sense legislation based on common ground. And like you, I'm tired of politicians putting party before people. And I offer you an opportunity to vote for someone who's interested in representing you, no matter your party affiliation. Like Wayne said, I served 20 years as an Army Reserve soldier learning about leadership. While serving my country, we soldiers wore these green tags on our ID tag chains that helped instill in me the Army values of loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. The Army loves acronyms, and these values spell out the word leadership. Well, in an Army kind of way, that is. These 7 values continue to guide me, and here are a few examples of how I will use these values as a Utah state legislator. I am loyal to you as constituents first. Duty requires me to seek the common ground that grows into sound policy and not just sound bites. Respect means that I never belittle those with differing views. I act with integrity as I do the right thing, both legally and morally. If we as Utahns are to solve the difficult issues like adequate public education funding, fair taxation, and local government control, we will need to elect leaders who espouse these values and who are willing to work with others to help shape a better future for all Utahns. The United Utah Party is where you find these leaders. Join with us and the rest of the many moderates in Utah who yearn for something better. With your help, we can make the change Utah needs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Piper. All right, and finally, we will hear from Alan Wessman. He's a candidate for the Utah State House of Representatives, District 64. Alan got his master's degree from BYU in computer science and has been working as a software engineer ever since. He lives in Spanish Fork and joins us from there tonight. Here's Alan Westman.
Thank you, Wayne. Hello, fellow Uniters and friends of other parties and no party. It's an honor to say a few words to you tonight. I'm Alan Westman, and I'm running for House District 64 in the Utah House of Representatives to represent Spanish Fork, Salem, and Woodland Hills here in South Utah County. You can visit my website at www.electawestman.com. I want to tell you of an experience I had some years ago that might sound familiar to many of you. I started feeling that I needed to be a better citizen and get more involved, and so I attended my neighborhood caucus meeting. You might guess how that turned out. Maybe it's similar to your recent encounters with partisan politics, more about gnawing on the bones of old grudges and recycled talking points, with very little of the positive problem-solving vision that I came there hoping to see. Our political system has problems, and one of those is that the political center, the moderates, have lost our voice. How do we change that? Well, we create a new place for the center to thrive, and we nourish it with our support in ways large and small. That's what drew me to the United Utah Party. It's a problem solvers party, a public service party, a common ground party, a coalition-minded party. I'm a computer systems engineer by profession. I love to look at a system and find ways to fix the problems in it. I'm running for the state legislature to fix some of the problems that partisan thinkers won't fix, to make gerrymandering a thing of the past, to fund our public schools and pay our teachers, to protect our water and air and our treasured landscapes from foolish exploitation, to look after the refugee, the mentally ill, the chronically disabled, and all of our neighbors who may be struggling to survive. It's time to elect folks who think for themselves, who care about people beyond their own base, who truly value public service and making our world a better place. You can help make this happen. Please visit the United Utah Party's website and find out more about me and my fellow candidates. Spread the word to friends and family who share these feelings. Donate what you can spare, even if it's just the cost of a hamburger. Campaigns tend to be expensive. Sign up to volunteer. We always love the help. And most importantly, please make sure you're registered to vote and resolve now to vote in November for positive, respectful, sensible change. Thanks.
Thank you, Alan. So those are a few, and I mean just a few, of our state candidates. There are a lot more. So for a full list of our candidates, please go to our website, unitedutah.org, and see if one is running in your area. And you can also meet our candidates at your local county convention and our state convention, and I'll tell you about those in just a little bit. But before we talk about that, we're going to hear from two candidates for US House of Representatives. So these will be up at the federal level, not the Utah level. First up, we'll hear from Jay Mcfarland. Jay is our UUP candidate for US House of Representatives in the 2nd Congressional District. As I mentioned before, Jay is a well-known podcaster and former talk radio host on KSL News Radio, so that might be where you've heard his name before. He ran for Congress in 2020 with the Republican Party, and we're thrilled to have him as a candidate of the United Utah Party in 2022. And so here he is. The United Utah Party is proud to present to you Jay Mcfarland.
Well, thank you so much. It's such an honor to be with you tonight. And I want to echo the sentiment and the words that we've heard so far from the other UUP candidates. I think we've got an impressive group of people, and you're making it easier for people to choose differently. And that's really kind of the goal. If you heard my speech on the first caucus, I'm calling this speech 2.0, just like this is caucus 2.0. So it will change just a little bit, but more than anything, I want you to get to know me, why I've decided to get back into politics again, and some of the biggest concerns that are weighing on my heart right now as we look at our political system. I was born in Bountiful, Utah. I have lived in many places, but Utah is my home. Oddly enough, I wasn't raised with any political viewpoints or philosophies. In my 20s, I was working for a restaurant chain here in Utah, had a lot of opportunity to drive around, and ended up listening to talk show hosts in Utah, like Doug Wright, Sean Hannity, Rush Limbaugh, And I started to, my gears started to turn a little bit. And I started thinking about this country. I started thinking about what makes it great. I started thinking about our rights and our Constitution. And I started to dive in and to study core constitutional principles. I actually went out and studied the lives of every single US president, every single Supreme Court ruling. I just started to crave these things. And I was also at the same time trying to call talk radio show hosts like Doug Wright and give them a piece of my mind. I tried to call some of the national hosts, but never got through. Now, after moving to Las Vegas for a business opportunity, I found a small radio station that would put anyone on the air who would write them a check. And I thought, like a lot of people think, well, I can do talk radio. And so I wrote them a check. And on 9 a.m. that Friday, I showed up, they turned the microphone on, and I started talking. No feedback, no expertise, nothing. And I just started sharing my opinions and taking phone calls. And I have to tell you, this process of sharing your opinions on a daily basis and then having people call you and tell you where you're wrong or where you're right, you grow a thick skin pretty quickly, but you also get exposed to every different belief system, every different platform. And you start to be exposed to thought processes that you had never heard of before. This caused me to be able to grow and expand in my belief system and to actually learn to listen to the other side and find out what they believe. I also soon discovered that I have the ability to change hearts and minds without the attacks, without the character assassination. I learned that you can be fierce in your beliefs. I want you to hear this, fierce in your beliefs while still respecting differences of opinion. I also learned that a diversity of ideas, this is a crazy thought, is actually a good thing. I came to believe that our nation is not great in spite of our differences. It's great because of our differences. And because we have this unique system that allows those of differing viewpoints to seek representation in legislative halls. Now, from Las Vegas, I was recruited to bring my show to Dallas, Texas, where I was on the air every weekday at 9 a.m. for 5 years. I couldn't believe that I had found my way into talk radio back from those days in the restaurant industry. One day I saw an ad for a talk show host position on KSL News Radio here in Utah, and I knew that this would finally be my chance to come back home where my friends and family and basically my home. They offered me the job immediately. I couldn't believe it. And I was chosen as the host who would replace John Hannity on KSL. I couldn't believe that I was returning to Utah. More than that, a dream come true to be on KSL News Radio, that station that I called every day so many years ago. It truly was beyond my wildest dreams. And I'll be honest with you, I thought that I would be a talk radio show host for the rest of time. It gave me the ability to participate in the issues of the day, to get my opinions out there, to change hearts and minds. But eventually I decided that being on talk radio was not enough. And part of that is, as you know, over the last 10 years, our politics have become so toxic. We no longer even attempt to win in the arena of ideas. Instead, we default to the attacks. We default to being the bully, to taking out the other side in the lowest possible means. Many have also decided that having a diversity of ideas is a bad thing, and that compromise is an evil word. The prevailing belief seems to be that there's only one way to run government and that everything else is wrong. Those who represent us have become skilled at division and making us believe that they have a monopoly on truth, while the other side is misguided and honestly, they just hate America, right? These dividers are pushing the country to a place where the extremes run the show. And more people are actually considering very extreme measures to force their will upon everybody else. This extreme partisanship has robbed us from the ability to interpret things objectively. We don't see things through a lens of right and wrong anymore. Instead, we view every issue through the lens of right versus left. This is because the toxicity in our government basically has changed our viewpoint and how we look at everything, instead of trying to win in the arena of ideas. Now, I ran last time as a Republican, as you know. I was hoping that I could create change within the party. And I had been a member for so long, I didn't want to leave my home. And so that's what I thought I would do. I soon found out, though, that my party was too far beyond any place that I thought it should be. So in November of this last year, I came to the conclusion that both of the parties, the major parties, were only in it for political gain, no matter how much the truth was against them. Watching my own party embrace unfounded election fraud claims and then attacking the science behind the pandemic, it made me realize that enough is enough. So I left. I didn't know where I was going to go, but I left. I thought that I was now without a political home until my good friend and former campaign manager, Dave Long, sent me a text which said, "Hey, JMac, what do you think about the United Utah Party?" And I'm embarrassed to say I hadn't given him much thought. But upon his prompting, I began to research this amazing party. And I was excited about what I found. A platform that I think 70% of Utahns can get behind without the divisions and toxicity. A party that celebrates and encourages a diversity of ideas. And behind these ideas, I found, and you're seeing them tonight, wonderful people of character who put their core principles over party power. In other words, I'm here to tell you, I found a new home and I'm so excited about it. Now, if you're not a member of the UUP yet, or you're wondering if you should support me, I want to share with you just a few quick ideas here that have been of great concern to me. The first is, what is the future of this country if we continue to cling to the two-party system and its extreme divisiveness? Think 10 years from now, 20 years from now. Can this country survive on its current path? I think there's only one destination, and that is the end. That's what happens when the two prevailing powers only seek to divide. And I also want you to think about the stated goal of both of the two parties. They want to take total control of the government and then steamroll over the other side. Think about it. That's both sides. If we can just get total control of the House and the Senate and the White House, then we can impose our will upon half of the nation. Is that representation? They plan for and dream of a time when they have total control and are literally going to ignore and stomp out half of the country. Is that what representation is supposed to look like, my friends? The wonder and beauty of this country is that any and every viewpoint can seek representation in legislative halls. Yet those who claim to love the Constitution are now trying to stomp out that representation completely. And they are not afraid to use things like gerrymandering to do it. These goals and ideas are not in line with the intent of our founders, and they cannot be considered in line with our founding document. I would ask you, what kind of country are we to become if either party gets their will to take away representation from the opposition through whatever means it is possible? If you love your country, if you love this Constitution, if you love the founding fathers, then please join me and cling to the idea in this country that we win in the arena of ideas by changing hearts and minds, not through legal shenanigans that silence the voice and vote of the opposition. A love of country should be a love of fellow citizens, regardless of viewpoints, and a system that allows for and even protects disagreements. I'm here, my friends, because I know how to change hearts and minds. I know how to do it without the toxicity. I know how to find common ground so that we can find solutions that benefit the largest number of people. I ask for your support. If it's just helping us post things on social media, then awesome. But more than anything, if you can get behind us financially, I know we can make a difference. Go to my website, jmacforutah.com, get involved today, and support all of these other amazing candidates that we see here tonight. Thank you for your time. Again, it's an honor to be here with you.
Thank you so much, Jay. We're glad to have you as a member of the UUP. Next up, we're going to hear from January Walker. January is our UUP candidate for the U.S. House 4th Congressional District. January is a product manager that leads software development teams that create solutions to protect the privacy and identity of consumers. This is her first run for political office, but she is already gaining some attention with her energy, her enthusiasm, and her signature purple jacket, as you can see, signifying the union of red and blue. The United Utah Party is proud to introduce to you January Walker.
Thank you so much. And Jay, there are so many things throughout your speech that I hope to echo here, and you're a tough act to follow. So just to begin, I want to share with you some of my observations. So far, what we've seen is that our current political and economic climate is turbulent. Americans are faced with new and rising challenges abroad and increased polarization at home. For decades, politicians have enabled and helped create a winner-take-all approach to policy, causing the United States to be divided and diminished by the distraction of partisans who seek power and personal gain over the gains of Americans as a whole. We have to remember that we're not red or blue. We're all a shade of purple. America's weakness is toxic and divided politics. If we are to lead the world, we will have to recalibrate America's politics and step outside of the major parties. Much needed critical reforms are all but impossible while we allow two warring tribes to define collaboration as weakness. We know the outcome of voting for major party candidates. The system that they operate in is designed to give us repeated and debilitating economic and environmental setbacks. Every vote for them is one more tear at the seams of our nation. We can't keep electing the same parties and expecting different results. The USA was never designed for partisanship, and that's why we see it breaking and putting the nation into gridlock. We need to loosen the grasp that they have on our future. The world is watching us to see if we will step up to the challenge, unify, and regain our place as a top-tier nation. The political climate that we've been handed does not need to be perpetuated. We can have sustained economic prosperity with happy, healthy, and free citizens. We can have a nation where our leaders put people over party politics. My politics elevated vision includes family dinners and neighborhood get-togethers where people feel peace and unity, where our differences don't divide us, but they bring us together. I see a thriving nation that doesn't have wallet emptying inflation or budget tightening housing, or even bankrupting healthcare. In the future, our nation will regain its title for #1 education in the world, allowing our citizens to compete with other top nations in a global economy. I see us embracing innovation and technology in ways that allow our human capital to be focused on work that needs the creativity of the human mind. I see high-paying part-time work that mobilizes a highly educated workforce of stay-at-home parents while allowing them to still care for their children. These are not pipe dreams. And as your representative, I will bring this vision to life for you, for Utah, and for the United States, for generations today, and for those who come after us. I want to leave you with a message of hope. The limitations that others place on us aren't real. Those limitations belong to them, not to us. We have the ability to make this vision a reality as early as next year. But we have to be passionate, and we have to work for that vision like no one else is working for it. And we'll get there and we'll succeed when we do that. Thank you so much for your time this evening. I invite you to visit my website at january4utah.com, where you can follow me on social media, donate, and volunteer with my campaign. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that message, January. And we're pleased, very pleased to have you with the party as well. We're pleased to have Evan McMullin with us today. Evan made a big splash in the 2016 election when he decided to run for president of the United States. Great ambition to have. He ran as an independent candidate. He received 21% of the vote in Utah, which for an independent candidate is pretty extraordinary. And now he is running for US Senate here in the state of Utah as an independent also. Evan is forming a coalition of parties and supporters from across the entire political spectrum. The United Utah Party is pleased to present at Caucus Night Encore, Evan McMullin.
All right, thank you very much, Wayne and Hilary, and for all of these incredible candidates. I mean, I'm pleased and honored and humbled to be among them, and have greatly enjoyed hearing their remarks tonight, as I did before when we gathered for the first time. And I want to thank everybody who's joining us as well. It's unfortunately rare that people take their civic duty as responsible as seriously as you are tonight. But you're certainly setting an example for many others to follow in years to come, hopefully right here at this forum and in cycles to come. So thank you very much. I have to advise you in advance, I had COVID a few months ago, and I still have a remaining cough that just doesn't seem to want to go away. So that's what's happening with me. But nevertheless, it's great to be with you again tonight. I look forward to your questions later on. I'll share just a few brief remarks. In short, I'm running because I'm concerned that our country is abandoning its values, and it's making us weak. So weak that we struggle to find common ground anymore and to solve problems. That's certainly been a theme that you've heard from other candidates here tonight. We're so divided, and the rise of political extremism is so intense that we can no longer find the solutions that we need to major challenges facing the country. And those include everything from the high cost of healthcare to air quality, which is certainly an issue for us here in Utah. The supply of water. We need to protect our water in this historic drought. We've got a problem, excuse me, with the inflation and general economic instability, and so many other challenges. Now we have, even the world's security is now at risk given the invasion of Ukraine by Putin's regime over the last month. So there are a range of challenges that we face, and as we fail to solve them, we become weaker and weaker, and we fall behind. And so I'm campaigning because Senator Lee has become a poster child for the politics of division and extremism that I'm speaking of. And that doesn't represent Utah well. It doesn't represent our values. It doesn't represent our interests. And we've got to make a change. I remember reading about my great-great-grandfather who first came to this place that we now call Utah in the mid-1800s. His name was William Wood. And he had decided that he would come to Utah, that he would travel from England to Utah and cross the Atlantic and trek across the plains and the Rockies in search of true freedom and economic opportunity. And while he was traveling, he wrote about his journey and the purpose of his journey. And in doing so, he called what is now Utah the haven of our hopes. And when he arrived in the Salt Lake Valley, he came to a place where many others, thousands of others that had arrived relatively shortly before him. And he became part of a community that, in order to survive and thrive in this harsh but beautiful environment, they knew they had to work together. They had to work together in order to overcome various serious challenges they faced. There weren't other, the populations very close by. They had to depend on each other. And so they did that. And that informs our history as a state. I believe it's still in our DNA. And now we call it the Utah way, which is, to me, sticking to principle, but still finding common ground to solve problems. Now, we're not perfect in that by any means, and we could all point to examples of our failures to live up to that standard. But in many cases, we do live up to that standard here in Utah. And as a result, in part, I think we have the fastest growing state, the fastest growing economy in population and economically. And I think that's because of our commitment to community and working together to solve problems. Now, obviously, on the national stage, something very different is happening. It's tearing the country apart. It's causing and exacerbating many challenges that now are impacting our quality of life here in Utah. I mentioned some of them before, whether it's inflation, the high cost of healthcare, air quality, lack of water. These are all challenges that, yes, need to be solved here locally, but that we won't solve entirely without working with others around the country on both sides of the aisle. That's something that Senator Lee has failed to do, but I know that we can do better because that's the Utah way. And so I'm running to replace him and to better represent our values and our interests in the US Senate. If we prevail, I believe it will make Utah the most influential state in the union. We see that senators who are willing to act with greater independence in representation of their constituents are the most influential people in Washington, second to the President of the United States. I want that for Utah. I firmly believe that the country needs Utah's leadership as much as we need better leadership and representation ourselves in Washington. So I'm campaigning for that. I'm doing something very different and inviting Democrats, Republicans, uniters like you who get this better than most others, to join this effort, independents as well, because a majority of Utahns want to replace Mike Lee. And I believe a majority of Utahns want to see political change. Over 64% of Utahns say now that they're willing to vote for someone other than a major party candidate. That's tremendous. That means all of these candidates that you've heard from tonight have a better opportunity than we've ever had as a community of reformers to help get our country on track and better represent our state. So I join the other candidates in urging you to join this effort, to unite rather than divide. We must answer the politics of division with a call for unity. And by doing the heavy lifting of finding common ground between groups that have considered themselves rivals at best, if not enemies, I firmly believe that we have tremendous common ground, far more than most people realize, and certainly more than our leaders lead us to believe. And I found that when we start with our values, it's easy to find common ground, and then we can build from there. We can find, that starting with values allows us to find that common ground, allows us to build trust, allows us to listen to each other, and allows us to find solutions to major challenges. So that's the kind of campaign we're running. Our team is cross-partisan, our donors are cross-partisan, our volunteers are cross-partisan, and there's a tremendous appetite out there for that. And I invite all of you to the cause. I truly believe that Utah is the haven of our hopes, but now more than ever, I sincerely believe that it must not only be the haven of our hopes, but the haven of the hopes of our country, which I believe is now looking to us increasingly for leadership. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Evan. And to speak to what Evan was just speaking to, I wanted to let you all know that this month, the United Utah Party Executive Committee voted unanimously to recommend that the United Utah Party endorse Evan McMullin and join his coalition of parties that Evan is trying to form. And by our rules, the UUP Executive Committee cannot endorse a candidate just by ourselves unilaterally. That has to be done by our delegates at our state nominating convention in April. Our state nominating convention will be held on Saturday, April 16th at 10 a.m. And so the vote on whether to officially endorse Evan McMullin will occur there. So I hope you'll join us there to voice your support. I will bring up a graphic for that. So this is some information about our state convention. It will be held at West High School on Saturday, April 16th at 10 a.m. And we will be nominating all of our United Utah Party candidates in state races and multi-county races at that convention, such as January and Jay and Kimberly, who you've just heard from. If you are a member of the United Utah Party, you are a delegate of that convention, you may attend and vote. If you're not a member of the United Utah Party, as you might have guessed, you are welcome still. Seems to be a phrase I say a lot. All may attend. Although you won't be able to vote on initiatives, you can still hear from our candidates and meet them and ask them questions, and we hope you'll come for that. Also, county conventions. In the coming weeks, we will be holding several county conventions where our party will be nominating candidates in county races, which includes most of our candidates for the Utah legislature and county commission seats. And here's a list of our county conventions. You can find some of these, you might find some of these are closer to home for you, so this might be more convenient. And if you're hurriedly writing down these dates and places, you can put down your pencil because all of these events are on our website, unitedutah.org. On the events tab, you can find each one of these. One important procedural note on conventions. As part of our outreach, some of our guests at tonight's caucus meeting are state delegates from other political parties that have been invited. If you would like to come to any of our conventions, you are very welcome, but it is against election rules to vote in multiple parties nominating conventions. So if you come to any of our conventions, just abstain from voting so that you can still fulfill your responsibility as a delegate at your own party's convention. We'd like you to still be able to do that. So besides the candidates you've just heard from, the United Utah Party is running a total of 24 candidates in races all around the state. Some are at the state level, some at the county level. This includes a candidate for state treasurer, county auditor, and county council in Salt Lake County, county commissioner in Millard and St. Pete counties, state legislature positions throughout the state. So wherever you live, find your UUP candidate running in your area on our website and please support them. Volunteer with their campaigns, donate to their campaigns. If everyone attending caucus night only donated $5 to the UUP or one of our candidates, it would really propel their campaigns forward in a profound way. So I wanted to show you how you can donate. So this is for United Utah Party. If you'd like to donate to the party, which we use the funds for our candidates generally and for support of the party, we have a Venmo on the left there, a United Utah Party. You can put something snappy in the comments since it's a Venmo. Or you can also donate by credit card on our website, www.unitedutah.org. And that's the QR code off to the right there. Each of our candidates also has a donate button on their websites. And if you go to their websites and click on those, you can help them with their campaigns. And if you're unable to donate money, but you're willing to donate your time or your abilities, then please go to the unitedutah.org website, click on the volunteer tab, and let us know how you can help. And once again, a lot of the candidates also have a way to, indicate that you're hoping to volunteer for them. And if they don't, then we can help connect you with the candidate that you would like to help. All right, I will go ahead and pull this up. Now we're going to go to Q&A. So as a reminder, the way you ask a question is with the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to submit questions. It's not in the chat. So you've been sending in your questions already, and one of our party members is screening them. We'll try to wrap up. I'd like to give us maybe about 20 minutes for questions. So, maybe looking at about 8:10, 8:15 would be a good time for us to wrap up. All right. So first question actually came in for Hilary for United Utah Party. Question is, do other states have a united party?
Pardon me, thank you. So the United Utah Party is only in Utah at this time. We've looked at options, looked at kind of the trajectory of other third parties, and you considered, what's the best way to approach this? And the ones that have been successful are those who start with the grassroots, because you can explode onto the political scene, but if you don't have that infrastructure to have precincts, caucus nights, or organize on the precinct level to get the word out about your candidates and to run these candidates on these smaller levels, those parties just don't have the staying power. So you have to begin with the grassroots, and those places where we can build out our grassroots organization the strongest are the places where we have the best chances of winning. So we do start small. All politics is local, and so that's the approach that we are taking. That said, I have personally had conversations with people in Texas and in Vermont and all over the country who are looking at what we're doing and are intrigued, are looking at what we're doing and wanting to get involved and wanting something like the United Utah Party in their own state. So do we want to forever stay just within the boundaries of Utah? I would love for us to someday be able to export the Utah way all across the country. But for right now, we're focused on starting small, starting local, proving that we can win on the ground, and then we'll take it on the road. So I hope that answers your question.
All right, thank you. I would also add to that it's not as limiting as it may sound, because every single political office, except for President of the United States, is a state office. And so we can still make a huge difference. And if we did want to support somebody for President of the United States, there are provisions in our Constitution and bylaws for getting on board with a coalition of states for a presidential endorsement. So we're really able to walk that walk if we need to do so. All right, the next question that came in was for Jay. The question is, can only a few independent politicians in Washington, D.C. really make a difference?
Oh, I love this question. I love this question because there is a misconception. I don't know if I want to call it a lie, but that there is power joining with other Republicans or other Democrats. What you're doing in those cases is you're actually diluting your power. But take a look at Washington right now. Who are the power brokers? Are they the people who vote with their party no matter what? Or are they those of a more independent mind? Think about the Mitt Romneys, the Senator Manchins. Those are people that have to be reconciled with. You have to go to them and you have to get their vote. We've been under this misconception that somehow we have greater power when we signal that we're all going to go along with a party no matter what they do. It's the same reason why presidents of the United States or candidates don't come to Utah to get a vote. They come to Utah to get $1, but they spend all their time in the swing states. Why is that? Because they can actually have an impact. They can actually have a say. Our lack of independence as a state, our addiction to one party dilutes our power. It makes us a flyover state. I can guarantee you that if suddenly in Washington, you had 1, 2, 3 independent voices like January, like Evan, that Utah will suddenly become one of the most sought after states because they will have to come to us for our vote. When we just vote with them, no matter what, they don't come to us. They don't need us. They're allowed to sell our vote to the highest bidder or to the highest special interest. So I believe with all my heart that if we can send third party or independent to Washington, we will wield tremendous power.
All right, thank you for that. Next question I had came for Evan. Evan, on your first day as an elected senator, what would you do to reestablish the United States energy self-sufficiency? How would you address climate change as part of this?
Well, obviously a tough question and an important one, but made tougher and more important given what we see happening in Ukraine, and we look at energy prices now going through the roof, and it's a big challenge. And obviously there are the environmental issues that I spoke of earlier, and that that are referenced in the question. So yeah, look, my view is that we need to obviously balance our energy interests with our environmental interests, and I think we can do that. And I think it's it's important that we invest more in clean sources of energy than we're doing now. I've made that a major part of my campaign. I'm calling for. I've set out 5 priorities for the campaign. One of them is protecting our air and water. A key way we can do that is through investing more in clean sources of energy. I do think, we could talk a lot more about it, but I do think an under represented part of this equation, and something that we don't discuss enough in the United States, is the possibility of nuclear power. And it's a tremendous source of energy. It's clean. I haven't quite decided that I'm calling for it yet, but I do see it as a potential solution to our energy and environmental challenges that just gets way too little discussion, essentially in consideration. And I think that's something that I would explore very seriously in the Senate very early on, because I just think it answers potentially a lot of problems for us. But one way or another, we need to invest in clean sources of energy more than we do now, and it's urgent.
All right, thank you. Next question came in for January. Question is, what role could or should government play in regards to reducing the amount of disinformation in citizens' media choices or promoting more media literacy?
When I saw this question come in, I was really excited because so much thought was put into how it was phrased and how it was asked. So as far as the government's role, the government needs to be incredibly careful on how they approach this, because we have the protection of free speech, and there's a risk of, if we start to limit the information that's out there, that it will be viewed as infringing on that free speech, and that it could also encourage those individuals that are putting out the information to be trusted more, because there is currently distrust in our government. So avoiding crackdowns of the news media is one thing that's helpful. So the other part of this is that there are a lot of politicians that are feeding into the news media. They are manipulating the news to provide misinformation, and they're using it for their political gain. And so making sure that we always hold those politicians accountable, and whenever we hear them saying dishonest things, we need to call it out. Personally, one of the things that actually drove me to running was the ability to provide transparency to our citizens. So with that, anytime there are conversations, making sure that those conversations are being held publicly, making sure that we are tracing back where the information came from. And if somebody says, well, so-and-so said this, taking that information, saying, well, actually, this is what was said. And once we start to bring that information forward and create sources in which people can trust, and there's options to do this through, there are a lot of influencers that we could work with that are helping bring forth trustable information. And we're also seeing that younger generations, specifically Gen Z, are noticing where the inconsistencies are. They're getting faster at detecting when somebody is promoting disinformation and diffusing that before the government even does. And so the big stuff that the government should do, if we're going to pick probably one thing, it's to continue to encourage independent and professional journalism and to call out the people that are providing accurate information and statements.
Excellent, thank you. All right, we have some questions for some of our state candidates. So first one to Kimberly Wagner, what do you see as the most important issue facing Utah today, and how would you address them?
I am very concerned about political reform and instituting political reforms that would permit more diverse voices to be involved in the legislative process. So things like fair redistricting, which has been very much in the news of late. Campaign finance reform. We are one of comparatively few states who, for our state legislative races, have virtually no restrictions, unlimited campaign contributions from organizations, from people out of state, et cetera. I'm concerned about partisan races that I think don't need to be partisan. For example, the state school board races. So looking at, making fewer partisan races, campaign finance reform, fair redistricting process. Again, I think those are huge priorities that will permit more people to be involved and engaged at the table where decisions are made. I actually wrote my dissertation on conflict management in global virtual teams. And so I've had an opportunity to look very closely at the ways to handle differences, and bringing more diverse voices to the decision-making process can make the process more complicated, but ultimately result in a better process, or rather a better decision that has more buy-in from various parties. So that would be my top priority.
Awesome, thank you. Sorry, I forgot to mute my microphone between that last one. Sorry if everybody heard me clacking away on my keyboard. All right, question for Jay. Question is, how do we mobilize the moderate middle majority? The extreme voices have caused us to get here, but so has the silence of the majority.
Yeah, this is another wonderful question. I've shared a lot in the past studies that I've seen that show those in the middle, although they outnumber everybody else, are the least likely to vote. They're the least likely to have posted a social media post about a candidate. They're the least likely to have donated to a candidate or to have attended a political event. And so you're asking the right question. Every one of us has talked about the mainstream middle today and how we have to be woken up. Something has to happen. I believe that there have been a series of events over the last 4 years that has caused people to kind of have the Matrix moment where they suddenly snap out of it and they start to question the reality that they've been in. January 6th is one of those things. Support for Vladimir Putin is another one of those things. Embracing incredibly extreme viewpoints without the rest of the party saying, wait a minute, that's not us. So all of a sudden, unlike before, unlike the 5 years before that, we haven't had this constant stream of controversy and extreme behavior that has been causing people to say, wait a minute, my party has left me. I believe that enough people have come to that conclusion that their party has left them, but they don't know that we are here. They don't know about the UUP. They don't know that there is an opportunity, that there are viable candidates right here. So they kind of, I think, go into a place where they decide, well, I can't do anything about it, so I'm going to just forget about politics. I'm going to plug my ears and I'm just going to live my life. And that's exactly the opposite response that we want them to have. We have to let the disgruntled and the lost and homeless know that there is a viable party here. And I'm going to add one more thing to this, having covered politics for 20 years in the media. The way that news organizations and that many people look at the viability of a candidate is not their resume. It's not what a good speaker they are. It's not any of those other metrics. There's only one question that they ask. How much money have you raised? And I hate that. It's a terrible way for our campaigns to be judged. But for all of those out there, who want the United Utah Party to be seen as a viable home, until we are raising money consistently, each one of us, we are not going to be taken seriously. And that's why I hope that you understand that being here tonight and deciding to vote for one of us is important, but we will not accomplish our goals under the current system unless we can say that each candidate is raising significant money. Only then will we be taken seriously. And so it's not so much about, what I need for my campaign. It's the message that we need to be sending out to the media and everybody else. The UUP needs to be taken seriously. Look at the money behind these candidates. That will get people's attention more than anything else, unfortunately.
Right. I should put the donate QR codes back up again.
Yes.
But,
Yes.
but yeah, you all know where to go. UnitedUtah.org and all of these candidates' websites have gone.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I have a question for Piper Manesse. This one is pretty straightforward. What is the first thing you do when you got to the legislature?
The first thing I would do is unstack the deck. That's what I would do. Just like Kimberly was saying, we need government reform before we can really get to these issues, because obviously the power struggle that we have right now, and especially in a state with a supermajority, it's locked up. We need to do things like clean up lobbying, just like she said about independent redistricting. We need to establish that independent redistricting commission again, term limits, ranked choice voting. All of those things help to end that logjam of we have to have all the power. I mean, they have 80% of the power, Republicans do, and that's obviously not enough for them. So in order to do that, term limits, we get rid of we got to be there for 10 years before we can even pass a bill, because the powers that be won't let us. I think we unstack the deck, and that's the first thing I would do.
All right, thank you. I'll go over to Alan. What can we do here in Utah to help overcome partisan extremism?
It's a great question. It helps to think about what causes the partisanship. I think a lot of that comes down actually to kind of the sportsification of politics, if you will, where it kind of becomes my team versus your team or versus their team, and it becomes part of someone's identity. I am on this team, and so I've got to stay loyal to the team. And there's some merit in that, but it can be taken to extremes, right? And so I think it's good to recognize that, first off, be willing to interact and engage with people with an attitude of friendship and sincere appreciation for the fact that people have deep-seated values and beliefs and are acting in what they most of the time act in what they feel is the best direction that they can think of, but to engage them in talking about and recognizing that issues are more complex than sound bites, and the issues are more important than the personalities. So take the personalities out of the equation and talk about what's important. Is election reform important? Is it important to have everyone have an equal voice in our political system? Is it important for us to protect the Great Salt Lake? to conserve water in this desert during this extraordinary drought that we're in. Talk about those kinds of things. Talk about facts and to keep things grounded in reality. And I think that as we do that, we'll be able to build on common ground. And it's building on that common ground where we establish that sense of trust, of civility, of equality. And then you get people thinking differently without that defensive and team-centered mindset. And that's the approach that I hope to take as a legislator.
All right, thank you. We have, there's never enough time for questions, especially with this many people. We're gonna have two more. I'm gonna go to January for one and then Evan for one. And I think that will probably wrap us up. So for January, question is, if you don't caucus with either party, how do you get on committees? This is a great question because a lot of people don't understand how this works.
Yeah, absolutely. So the answer is that we will caucus with whomever will champion Utah's values along with us. The second question that you had was, how do you get on committees, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the other half of that is that, sorry, I lost my train of thought there for just a moment. So we will be getting on committees when the other parties recognize that the value that we are bringing to the table and the movement that we are bringing to the table is within their best interests, and that we do work better together.
Yeah, and I would add to that, I've seen many committees here in Utah where, the Democrats have been brought onto those committees by Republicans just in the spirit of good faith and diversity of thought. And that does still happen in politics, believe it or not. All right, and then our question for Evan. This one was a good one. As Asians, we have felt some difficulties to fit in this country. Utah is better, but I'm not optimistic about the future. We have been isolated. As a senator, what can you do to unite the diverse communities and not let anybody be left behind?
Well, I think the first thing we need to do is we need to be talking about it. I mean, I was speaking to a friend of mine in Southern California, an Asian friend recently, who, where there's a lot, the Asian community in Southern California is actually rather large, and they still experience, especially during the pandemic, anti-Asian hateful attacks when they're out and about, and again, especially during the pandemic. And I think, it's incumbent upon our leaders to model, an inclusive America. It's incumbent upon our leaders to speak on behalf of our values, namely that, we're all created free and we're all created of equal value and equal under the law. And we're not defined as some extremists in the country say, by blood and soil, or in other words, where you were born or the color of your skin, but rather by our values. And this is a place, America, for all, for all people, we're not defined by our religious views. We're not defined by our racial backgrounds. We're not defined by where we were even born. Certainly, I mean, immigrants add so much value to the country. Some 43% of Fortune 500 companies were started by immigrants or their offspring. I mean, we're a diverse country. We're stronger when we're diverse, or we're stronger because of our diversity. I learned that while serving in the Central Intelligence Agency when we were overseas doing our counterterrorism work, for example. We were much stronger because we had people of various different backgrounds in our teams, and people who were born all over the world, but who had become Americans and stepped up to serve the country in a time of need. And so I just think our leaders have to model that, and I think about, Senator Lee, my opponent, and, just a couple of weeks ago, he was the only senator to try to block a bill that would create a memorial at a former Japanese internment campsite in Colorado. You know, what kind of message does that send to the country about the value of Asian Americans in our country? What kind of message does that send to have a sitting senator, one of 100 only, the senior senator from Utah, blocking that, even though all of his colleagues, Republicans and Democrats, saw the value in honoring Japanese Americans who went through that atrocity, and our leaders need to be committed to our values so that they can model an inclusive country. And certainly we don't have that in Senator Lee and others, certainly. But I think the first step we need to do is replace those leaders and any leaders who aren't fully committed to our values. For me, it always goes back to our values. We've got to have leaders committed to our values, who model them, who promote them, and we're going to need to make some changes, obviously, in order to protect our values.
Well, everybody, thank you so much for the questions that you submitted. They were excellent questions. And of course, to our candidates for answering them, they were excellent answers. And so with that, we're going to wrap up our caucus night tonight. I just want to close by giving my thanks to all of you who attended and all of you who especially have got the courage to run for office. You know, a lot of people have asked us over the years, what does it take to run for office? And we are a citizen-led country. And so these are people just like you and me, really. You know, these are people who just saw a need and jumped into it, and we thank them. And for all of you who gave your Wednesday night to come and listen to them and learn more about them, we really thank you too. There are two kinds of people out there politically, those who lament it silently and just sit it out, and those who just come charging into the rescue and try to help out. And they're the doers in our community. And I believe firmly that you are the doers. And so thank you for coming out tonight. We hope you'll learn more about the United Utah Party again at our website. There's contact information there that you can reach out to myself or to Hilary, and just be well, all of you, and we will hopefully see you at one of our county and state conventions in the coming month.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. See you around.
Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. And for those who are wondering, this will be made publicly available.